I had $10. One decision. And it changed everything. I didn't know what was inside that unit. I didn't know what was inside that lockbox. I just knew, something was wrong with how heavy it felt. Nobody else wanted it. They laughed at me. A 17-year-old kid. No home. No plan. No business being there. But I raised my hand anyway. What I found inside that room, inside that box, shocked everyone. Including me. This is the story of how $10 bought me a future nobody saw coming. If that sounds impossible, keep watching. Hit subscribe. Drop your city below. I want to know where you're watching from. Let's go back to the beginning. Chapter 1. The door didn't slam. That was the worst part. It just closed. Quietly. Final. My uncle hadn't even looked at me when he said it. You're not my responsibility anymore. 7 words. 17 years of my life, and that's what I got. I stood on the pavement with a backpack that weighed almost nothing. Because almost nothing was exactly what was in it. I counted what I had. 5. 10. $10. That was it. 2 bills. I counted them twice just to be sure, hoping somehow the number would change. It didn't. The night was cold in the way that gets inside your jacket and stays there. The air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet and cigarette smoke drifting from somewhere I couldn't see. My shoes were thin. I could feel every crack in the sidewalk. I found a bus shelter and sat. Around me, the world kept moving like I wasn't even there. A man in a work uniform scrolled his phone, waiting to go home. A woman across the street unlocked her front door without thinking, like it was the easiest thing in the world. A couple walked past, laughing, warm inside their own little world. They had somewhere to sleep tonight. I had $10 and nowhere to go. That's when I saw it, a handwritten flyer, taped to the inside of the shelter. Storage unit auction. Cash only. Units start at $10. I didn't know what that meant. But something about it pulled at me. Chapter 2. The address led me to a row of warehouses on the edge of town. Rusted gates. Gravel underfoot. The kind of place that doesn't exist on the nicer side of any city. There were maybe 40 people already there. Adults. Most of them older. Some carried notepads. Others spoke in low voices like they'd done this 100 times before. I pulled my hood up and stood at the back, trying to look like I belonged. I didn't belong. The auctioneer moved fast. Clipboard in hand. No small talk. A metal door rolled up, the crowd leaned in. Old furniture. Broken appliances. Someone groaned. Someone else laughed. Nobody bid. Next unit. Door rolls up again. This time, boxes, neatly stacked. 3 people raised their hands immediately. The number climbed fast. Way past 10. My stomach dropped. $10. That's all I had. These people were spending hundreds without blinking. I almost left. I should have left. But then, Unit 9. Door rolls up. Silence. Just dust and shadows and a pile of forgotten things nobody wanted. Do I have $10? My hand was already moving. Chapter 3. The auctioneer barely looked up. Unit 14. Who'll start at 50? Silence. 30? Nothing. 20? A few people shook their heads. Someone muttered something. Someone else laughed. The unit was dark. Dusty. A busted chair visible just inside the door. Nothing about it said value. $10. Last call. Anyone? The money in my pocket felt like it was burning. Without thinking, I raised my hand. The crowd turned. 40 pairs of eyes landing on me at once. The kid in the worn jacket. The youngest person there by at least 15 years. Someone chuckled. A man near the front shook his head slowly. A woman whispered something to the person beside her. I didn't move. I didn't look away. $10. Going once. My heart was hammering. Going twice. I stopped breathing. Sold. I clutched that receipt and key like they were the most valuable things I'd ever held. Maybe they were. I stepped toward the unit. The laughter had faded. The crowd had already moved on. But I stood at the entrance, staring into the dark, wondering what in the world I had just done. Chapter 4. The smell hit me first. Dust. Old wood. Something metallic underneath it all, like the air itself had been locked in here for years. I stepped inside slowly. Broken chair. Cracked picture frame. A bin bag that had split open at the bottom, spilling old newspapers across the floor. My chest sank. The people who laughed, maybe they were right. Maybe this was exactly what it looked like. Nothing. But I kept moving. I lifted the first box carefully. Books. Yellowed, warped. Worthless. Second box, old kitchen items, nothing remarkable. I exhaled. Slow. Steady. Tried not to think about the $10. Then, a canvas bag tucked against the wall. Inside, tools. Clean. Carefully wrapped. Barely used. My heart lifted slightly. Okay. Maybe not nothing. I kept digging. More boxes. More ordinary. The doubt crept back in, heavy and familiar. And then I saw it. Pushed to the back. Partially hidden beneath a folded tarpaulin. A small black lockbox, metal, solid, completely out of place among everything else. I picked it up. It was heavy. Dense in a way that meant something was inside. No key in the box. No key on top. I searched. Lifted everything nearby. Then crouched down toward the toolbox. And taped underneath, barely visible, a tiny silver key. My hands were shaking. I fit the key in. Turned it slowly. The lid clicked open. Chapter 5. 6 watches. Nestled in foam padding, arranged like they'd been placed there deliberately. Carefully. By someone who knew exactly what they had. Silver casings. Gold dials. Engravings so fine I had to tilt them toward the light just to read them. I didn't recognize the brands, not immediately. But something about the weight of each one, the way they caught the light, told me these weren't department store watches. These were something else entirely. I wrapped them back carefully. Tucked the box under my arm. And walked. The pawn shop was 3 blocks away. An older man behind the counter. Reading glasses. Unbothered expression, the kind that comes from years of seeing everything. Until he saw the watches. He picked up the first one. Then the second. Set his glasses down. Picked them back up. Where did you get these? Storage auction, I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Kid. He leaned forward slowly. Do you have any idea what these are worth? I shook my head. He exhaled. Sat back. Shook his head like he was processing something he hadn't expected to process today. I didn't know the number yet. But I felt it. Something had just shifted. Quietly. Permanently. For the first time in days, I had hope. Chapter 6. I didn't sell anything yet. Not immediately. Because I realized something standing in that pawn shop, I didn't know enough. And not knowing enough had already cost me too much in life. I wasn't going to let it cost me this. I found the public library 2 days later. I sat at a corner terminal for 6 hours straight. I studied. I researched. I tracked auction records, vintage watch forums, collector communities I didn't know existed the week before. I built a list. I cross-referenced serial numbers. I learned the difference between a replica and the real thing, and why that difference meant everything. Every morning I came back. Every evening I left knowing more than I had arrived with. And somewhere in those quiet hours, something else shifted. These watches had been sitting in that unit for years. Forgotten. Locked away. Dismissed by everyone who walked past them. Written off before anyone even looked closely enough to understand what they were. I knew that feeling. I had been kicked out. Written off. Dismissed by the one person who should have looked closer. But discarded didn't mean worthless. Overlooked didn't mean without value. I had just needed someone to open the box. Maybe, so had I. I wasn't the same scared kid who stood at the back of that auction crowd anymore. I was someone who had studied. Who had shown up. Who had built something from nothing, deliberately, carefully, 1 hour at a time. Now it was time to find out if it was real. Chapter 7. I didn't sell to the first buyer who messaged me. Or the second. I waited. I studied every offer. I understood what I had well enough now to know what it was worth, and I wasn't going to let desperation make that decision for me. Not this time. The right buyer came on a Tuesday. The number he paid, I'm not ready to share that yet. But I'll tell you what it felt like. It felt like oxygen. Like a door opening from the inside. That evening I ate a real meal for the first time in 2 weeks. I paid a week's deposit on a room in a shared house. Small. Clean. Mine. I sat on that bed that night and I just exhaled. I hadn't called anyone for help. I hadn't asked for anything. I had studied, I had waited, I had built this from a $10 receipt and a key taped under a toolbox. I hadn't relied on anyone else. That feeling was worth more than the sale. But the story wasn't finished. I went back to the unit the next morning, just to clear it properly. And that's when I saw it. A second crate. Pushed completely flat against the back wall, hidden in shadow. I'd walked past it a dozen times. I hadn't missed it. I just hadn't looked far enough back. My pulse quickened. Again. Chapter 8. The crate was heavier than it looked. I dragged it forward. Pried the lid open with a flathead from the toolbox. And stopped breathing. A wooden box, hand-carved, deliberate, beautiful. Beside it, 3 cloth rolls. I unwrapped the first one slowly. Antique coins. Arranged by date, by origin, by denomination. Someone had spent years collecting these. Someone who knew. The second roll, 2 more watches. Different from the first 6. Older. Rarer. Then the wooden box. Inside, journals. 6 of them. Neat handwriting. Decades of entries, auction strategies, market observations, valuations, notes on patience. On timing. On seeing what others dismissed too quickly. I sat down on the floor of that unit and I read. 4 hours. This person, whoever they were, had built something quietly. Methodically. Without anyone watching. They had understood something I was only beginning to grasp. Hidden value is everywhere. Most people just never stop long enough to find it. I wasn't just holding coins and watches anymore. I was holding an education. A philosophy. A life's work left behind, somehow, for whoever was paying close enough attention. I had paid attention. Chapter 9. Months passed. Then a year. I thought about that unit often, not just what was inside it, but what it had done to me. What it had required of me. Because in the end, the watches and the coins and the journals were never really the point. That unit had been a classroom. It had taught me how to look closer than everyone else was willing to look. It had been a proving ground, a place where a scared 17-year-old with $10 had to decide whether desperation would make him reckless or sharp. And it had been a mirror. The most honest one I'd ever stood in front of. I had an apartment now. Small, but entirely mine. I paid for it myself, every month, without asking anyone for anything. I had a system, a process, a reputation in circles I didn't even know existed the night I sat in that bus shelter. And sometimes, I thought about the people who laughed at that auction. The man who shook his head. The woman who whispered. The crowd that moved on before the door had even closed behind me. None of them had bid on Unit 14. I had. $10. That was where this began. $10, a handwritten flyer, and the willingness to raise my hand when everyone else had already decided it wasn't worth it. That decision didn't just change my circumstances. It changed how I saw everything. Chapter 10. Before you go, I need to ask you something. Have you ever felt overlooked? Like something in you hadn't been seen yet, not by the people around you, not by the world, maybe not even by yourself? Because that's what that unit taught me more than anything else. Value doesn't disappear just because nobody's looking. It waits. Quietly. For whoever is patient enough, brave enough, to stop and look closer than everyone else walked away. That's all I did. I was 17 years old with $10 and a decision most people in that crowd would never have made. Not because they couldn't, but because they'd already decided the outcome before the door opened. Don't do that with your own life. Whatever you're sitting on right now, whatever feels dusty, forgotten, overlooked, look closer. The lockbox is in there somewhere. It always was. If this story meant something to you, subscribe. Leave a like. And drop a comment below telling me where you started from. Your lowest number. Your smallest moment. I read every single one. Because every lockbox deserves someone willing to find the key.